Let's make sure that we're ready for the test on Unit 7, Angle Relationships and Triangle Similarity. So as always, make sure you're showing all of your work and your thinking so it's perfectly clear that you know what you're doing, and make sure that you circle your answers so that it's easy to find when we're correcting this. So let's make sure we follow the instructions here. It says find the measure of the indicated angle. So the angle that we're missing is right here, and this is just one of those classic triangle sum theorem problems. If you wanted to write down an equation and write down, okay, I don't know what that angle is, but I do know if I add all of these angles up, then I end up with 180 degrees. If you want to do it like that, you are totally welcome to do it. If you want to just show 180 and then subtract 134 and then subtract 24, that's totally fine. Either way would be okay. If it does say write an equation though, you need to make sure that you write an equation. So I would make sure that you have your calculator handy. I'm going to bring up the calculator, throw this in, and see what the answer is. So I put in the calculator 180 minus the 134 degrees we'd already used, then the 24 degrees that's over here. That leaves 22. So I'm going to write 22. I'm going to put the degree symbol on there, and I'm going to circle that. So either way we show our work would be just fine as long as we're showing our work. So again, I'm going to set this one as x plus 83 plus 50 equals 180, and then I can solve that. Or I know I'm just going to be moving the 83 and the 50 to the other side by subtracting. So if I wanted to do this from the start, that would be fine, and then throw it in the calculator. Again, please make sure you throw it in a calculator so you don't lose points for some silly mistake. So I threw that in the calculator. I've got the 180 minus the 83 minus the 50 represented here. We ended up with 47. So I'm just going to write 47 degrees right here, circle that, and we're on to the next one. You'll notice that on this one, on number 3 and number 4, it does say write an equation, find x, and then find angle A. So it's very specific. We've got to make sure that we do all three of those things. Write the equation, find the x. So we'd want to circle that so everybody knows what the answer is. And then we want to find the measure of angle A. So we're going to add all of these together. So we're going to do x plus 66 plus x plus 62 plus 74 equals 180. So we've got the first angle plus the second angle plus the third angle. We add all those together and set it equal to 180. And then we've got some like terms. So here's what we've got. So I combined the like terms. I combined the x plus the x. I got 2x. And then I added 66 plus 62 plus 74. Double check me on the calculator. So I got 202 equals 180. And then I solve from there. So we're going to subtract the 202. So we get 2x equals, let's see, that's going to be negative 22. So we're going to divide everything by 2. So we're going to get x equals negative 11. So the x value is negative 11. And again, don't forget, we get points for writing that equation. So let's put a dotted circle around that. I'll do a dotted circle around the negative 11. And then we need to figure out what angle A is. So we're going to take this and we're going to plug it in right there. So this is going to be negative 11 plus 66. So we end up with 55. So angle A, let me get that out of there. I'll actually show it right here. Angle A is 55 degrees. We've got all the work there. We've got everything circled, so we should be in good shape. Might not be a bad idea to double check and make sure that we got this right by checking what happens if we plug in a negative 11 right here. If we plug in a negative 11 right here, we end up with a 51. And then let's check on the calculator. What would happen if we added those together? So I'm going to clear this off, and we get 55 plus 51 plus 74. This is just kind of a double check to make sure we haven't made any silly mistakes. I was typing something in wrong there, but I think I got everything right there. Add those together, we do get 180. So we know we got that one right. Let's take a look at the next one. Again, we're going to need to write an equation, so we're going to add all of those angles together. Whoops, 72 plus x plus 92 plus 40 equals 180. And if you want to move the 40 over and make that a little smaller, I mean, you're still going to be adding a bunch of numbers together. So let's see what we get here. If we add the x's together, we get a 2x, and then I'm going to go ahead and add all the numbers together on the calculator. So if I add them together on the calculator, the 72 plus the 92 plus the 40, I end up with 204. So that would be 204, and that equals 180. Again, we've already got some points just by writing down the equation. So let me put a dotted circle around that so we can keep track of that. That was good work right there. We're going to subtract the 204 here. So we get 2x. This would be negative 24. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So we end up with x equals negative 12. Going to put a dotted circle around that one right there, and we're going to plug it in to find out what A is. So if we did negative 12, so negative 12 plus 72, this is going to end up being 60 degrees right here. So we'll go ahead and circle that. Um, 60 plus 40, that would be 100. So that means this one over here has to be 80. And let's check and see if that works out. If I plug in a negative 12 there, I do get 80. So 80 plus 40 plus 60, that would be 180. So we know we got that one right. Probably don't need to use a calculator, but if you needed to, go ahead and double check. On number 5, it says find the measure of the indicated angle. Remember, when we've got this auxiliary line here, this extra line showing this exterior angle right there, we're using the exterior angle theorem. And the exterior angle theorem said basically this: we add the two remote interior angles together to get the exterior angle. So I'm going to do x plus 16 equals 58, and then we just subtract 16, so we end up with x is equal to, that would be 42. So that missing angle right there is 42 degrees. Now, if you show a little bit of work here, even the 58 minus the 16, that would be totally okay. Please don't just write down an answer and expect to get all the points. We need to see a little bit of work here. This one, sometimes these are the hardest. This is a weird one. We just want to know what this angle right here equals. And remember, you're going to add the two inside to equal the one outside. So 50 plus 58 equals 108. So this angle right here is 108 degrees. It's that easy. We add the two angles inside and set it in, and it equals the one outside. Okay, now we need to write an equation, find x, and then find the measure of the indicated angle. So we want to find the measure of angle Q on this particular one, but in order to do that, we need to know what the relationship is between this one on the outside, this exterior one, and then the two remote interior angles. Well, remember, we're going to add the two of these together, and it equals the exterior one. So I'm going to do 5x plus 20 plus 50. There are the two inside ones, and we're going to set it equal to the one on the outside. And this happens to be an algebraic expression by itself. So we've written the equation. Let's go ahead and solve the equation. This would be 5x plus 70 equals 10 plus 10x. I'm going to move the 5x to the other side by subtracting 5x. So that means I'm going to move the 10 over. So let's see, we get 60 equals, this would be 5x. So divide by 5 and we end up with x equals 12. So I'm going to circle that. Let's go ahead and put a circle around that. So there's what x is equal to, and then it wants the measure of angle Q. Well, if we want the measure of angle Q, that means we're going to plug it in right here. So that's going to be 5 times 12 plus 20. So that's going to be 60 plus 20. So this is going to be 80 degrees right here. So we've got the equation that we set up using that relationship between the exterior angle and the two remote interior angles. We solved it. We got x equals 12, and then we plugged it in, and we know that angle Q happens to be 80 degrees. Let's do the same thing on this next one. The two angles inside add up to be the one on the outside. So 8x plus 4 plus 5x plus 5 equals 126. See what we've got here. This would be 13x plus 9 equals 126. So we'll move the 9 over by subtracting 9, and we end up with 13x over here, and then let's see, 126 minus 10 would be 116. It's only minus 9, so this is going to be 117, and then we're going to divide by 13. Getting a little bit nervous. I'm not sure if that's going to go in evenly, so we probably ought to use a calculator, but taking a look at that, I got a good feeling about that. Let's see what happens here when we do 117 and we divide by 13. I think that's going to work out just fine. It is. Okay, we end up with a 9, so x equals 9. Now, if we had gotten a fraction answer on that one, no problem. We could still work with that. It just wouldn't quite be as nice. So let's take this one. It says find the measure of angle E. So if we plug that in and find the measure of angle E, we're going to put it right here. So that's going to be 5 times 9 plus 5. That's 45 plus 5, so that's going to be 50 degrees right here. So we're going to say, make it clear that we know that that is angle E. In fact, we could also do this to make it really clear. We could say the measure of angle E equals that stuff right there. Okay, so we've got that one done. Let's come down here and take a look at the next few because I think we changed gears here. It says name the angle relationship and find the measure of the indicated angle. So this is where we're dealing with parallel lines and transversals. Again, those little arrows tell me that those two lines are parallel. And let's think about what this is. Notice that this 66 is kind of in the upper right-hand corner, sorry, upper left-hand corner of this intersection. And if we come up to this intersection, the question mark is also in the upper left-hand corner. So what that means is these are corresponding angles. So corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are ones that are congruent. So the missing angle would be 66 degrees. So there's the name of the relationship and there's the missing angle. These two, they are on the outside of the parallel lines. So these are exterior angles and they're on opposite sides and opposite intersections. So these are alternate exterior angles. All right, and we know that alternate exterior angles are congruent, so that's going to be 50 degrees. So the missing angle is going to be 50 degrees. Let's come down here. Same thing, we're naming the relationship and finding the measure of the angle. These are on the inside, both of these are on the inside of the two parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides and opposite intersections. So these are alternate interior angles, and they've got to be congruent, so that missing one's got to be 59. And then let's take a look at this one right here. These are on the inside of the parallel line, so these are interior angles, and they're also on the same side of the transversal. So these are same side interior angles. And you might want to remember what happens with these. These are not congruent. These are actually supplementary. So I'd have to take 116 and add whatever that is to equal 180. Or if I just wanted to do a quick subtraction problem and do 180 minus 116, that would be totally okay. 180 minus 116, I believe we're going to end up with 64. So that angle right there would be 64 degrees. Now, if you wanted to, you could also say that these are consecutive. You could say that those are consecutive angles, but this is a much better description of what they are. So they're same side interior, they're supplementary, so that one's got to be 64 degrees. Okay, next one. Write an equation, find x, and then find the measure of both of the angles. So we've got to take a look at this one and figure out what's going on. Write an equation. The equation that we'd write here, now this is kind of going back a little bit. These two are across from an intersection. They're opposite from each other in an intersection. So that doesn't have any of those fancy names. Those are just vertical angles. Okay, so I'm just going to write vertical angles right here. Not that you have to, it didn't say you had to name those. So those are congruent. So the equation we're going to write is 18x plus 7 equals 20x minus 5, and then we're going to solve that. So I'm going to move the 18x to this side. So that means I'm going to move the 5 to the other side. So that's going to be plus 5. So that's going to be a 12 over here. That's going to be a 2x over here. So we get x equals 6. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that. And then we've got to plug this in over here. We've got to put a 6 right there. So this would be 18 times 6 plus 7. And we've got to put a 6 right here. So this is 20 times 6 minus 5. So let's see, that would be 120 minus 5. So that would be 115 degrees. Okay, so we think this one's 115, but remember, they should be exactly the same. So let's just check and see if this works out. I'm going to grab the calculator for this one. I'm going to do 18 times 6 minus 7. Now I could try and figure that out in my head, or that's a plus 7, but this is a test. We're getting ready for a test, so we want to make sure that we're doing this right. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and it is 115. So this one over here is 115 also, so I'll write 115 there, circle those. We've got the equation, we found x, and we have both of the angles. On this one right here, you'll notice that those are corresponding. Again, I don't have to write that. But I do need to write down an equation, and I really need to know what the relationship is so I can write down that equation. These are corresponding angles, so they're going to be congruent. So this is going to be 15x equals 16x minus 8. I'm going to bring the 16 over there by subtracting 16x. So that's a negative x equals negative 8. Please don't lose track of the negative on either side. We end up with x equals 8 on this one. I'm going to go ahead and circle that, and then I'm going to plug this in. 15 times 8. So 15 times 8. 15 times 10 would be 80. And sorry, 8 times 10 would be 80, and then 8 times 5 would be 40. So 80 plus 40, this is 120. But again, this is a test, so let's make sure we're getting this right. I'm going to do 15 times 8, so we end up with 120. Let's do 16 times 8, and then let's subtract 8. And if you think about it, that should be exactly the same, because if this was multiplying by 8 and then we subtracted 8, that's the same as 15x. So this is going to be 120 also. So those happen to be the same on both of those. And then let's take a look at number 15. These are, think about the name here, they're on the outside and they're on opposite sides and opposite intersections. So these are alternate exterior. Again, you don't have to name them, but you do have to know the relationship. Alternate exterior angles are congruent, so this is going to be 10x equals 9x plus 6. We're going to subtract the 9x, so that's going to give us an x equals 6. So we know that that's 6 right there. So this would be 10 times 6. That would be 60 degrees, so we got that one. 9 times 6 would be 54, and 54 plus 6, that's going to be 60 degrees right there. So we got both of those, and we know they're congruent. Not too bad there. And then let's take a look at number 16. On number 16, let's see, they're on the inside of the parallel lines, and they're on the same side of the transversal. So these are same side interior, and you've got to remember the relationship here. If they're same side interior, or another name that you could give to these particular ones would be consecutive, they've got to be supplementary. So that means when we add them together, so 110 plus x plus 86, it's got to equal 180. So this is going to be 2x plus, gosh, let's see what we get here. That's not too bad. That's 196 equals 180. So we're going to subtract the 196. So we're going to get 2x equals negative 16. Divide by 2, so we're going to get x equals negative 8. Now we don't need to panic that this is negative, but let's just make sure we work this out the right way. On this one, what we'd be saying is that this would be 110 minus 8, so this angle would be 102. Okay. For this one, this would be negative 8 plus 86. So this would work out to be 78 degrees right here. Now, if we add those together, if we do 102 plus 78, do we get 180? We do. So it worked out just fine. So we got our equation, we got the x, and we got the two angles. And let's come down here and take a look at these last couple here. It says, state whether the following triangles are similar. If they are similar, complete the similarity statement. So let's take a look. This is one of those overlapping triangles that I talked about. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw the small one right here. That would be Q, D, and E. And then the big triangle would look like this. The big triangle would be Q here. Make that look a little bit better. Would be Q here, and then R here, and then S right here. Now you'll notice Q is the same on both of them, so that one's definitely congruent. And then I want you to notice that we've got parallel lines right here. So if I were to draw an auxiliary line, okay, so that we could see that those are parallel and this is that transversal, what name could we give to these guys right here? Those are corresponding. They're in the same place in the intersection. So those would be congruent. So that means that angle D right here would be congruent to angle R. And now we have angle-angle similarity. So triangle QDE. So let's take a look. QDE. So from one arc to two arcs to none would be similar to, and notice that symbol is wrong right there. So let me get rid of that. So I got rid of that. So if we've got triangle QDE, this is going to be triangle one arc to two arcs to none, so this is going to be QRS. Okay, so there's our answer there. And again, the reason is angle-angle similarity. Let's take a look over here. Can we make any conclusions about this? We do know that those two would have to be congruent because those are vertical angles. So I'm just going to write vertical right there. So vert angles, those are congruent to each other because they're vertical. But if this one's 37 and it doesn't match up with either one of those, it really doesn't matter what happens right here, because we have these other two, this one would have to match up with one of them at least. So we're going to say no similarity, and we're going to circle that. And then we're going to come down to the last two on the assignment. It says find the measure of the indicated angle and show all your work. So you don't necessarily have to write an equation or anything like that, but you do need to make sure that you're showing your work and your thinking to solve this. So I'm going to blow this one up just a little bit. And let's take a good look at what's going on here. We need to find that missing angle, that missing angle down on the bottom, this one right here. We know that this one's 56, but we don't know this one right here. So if we take a look at this other triangle, though, we do know something about that. This is 25 and this is 55. So 25 plus 55 is 80 degrees. So if these two add up to 80 degrees and there's 180 degrees on the inside of the triangle, this has got to be 100 degrees. It's got to be 100. And these are vertical angles, so that's got to be 100. So what that means is we can just figure out what's left. So we can take 180, subtract the 100, that's 80, and subtract the other 56 that we used in that one. So that's going to end up being 24 degrees. So this angle right here is 24 degrees. We're going to go ahead and circle it, and we're all set. And we'll slide over and we'll take a look at the very last one. Okay, I've blown this up so we've got a nice big diagram right here. The angle that we want to find is this one. We only know this angle 75 degrees in this particular triangle. We know that's 80, we know that's 70, and we know that's 150. So we don't even have a triangle where we've got two of the angles on the inside. So there are a couple things that we could do though. The quickest way to do this one would be to do this. Let's take this right here, and we know that these two, so again we're basically ignoring the rest of this diagram right here. These two are remote interior angles to that one right there. So that means these two have to add up to be the 150. So that would be, that would be x plus 70 equals 150. So I'd subtract the 70, so that means x is equal to 80. So we've got 80 degrees right here. So I'm going to say that that equals 80 degrees. Now I'm going to bring back this part of the diagram, and we'll take a look at this and say, well, wait a minute. We don't know what this one is, but we do know this. That's one straight line, and we've got 80 here and 80 here. So between the two of those, that's 160 degrees. So if I take 180 and I subtract 80 and subtract another 80, that's 180 minus 160. So we end up with 20 degrees. So that means this has got to be 20 degrees right there. Now you'll notice that I did this one with just a subtraction problem. Over here I did an equation. Totally okay either way, just fine. Okay, so that is 20 degrees. And then what we're really after is we're after this one right here. So I'm going to do 180, and we're going to subtract the 75 we already used and subtract the 20 we already used. So this is going to be, let's use the calculator and double check, 180 minus 75 minus 20. And again, we probably could have figured this out in our head, but it's a test. We got a lot riding on it, so it says that this is 85 degrees. So I'm going to write this down as 85 degrees. I'm going to circle that, and we are all set to go. So this is roughly what the test is going to be like. Lots of good problems here to practice. Again, we've got a lot of vocabulary here when we're talking about same side interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, all of those sorts of things. A lot of stuff to keep track of. Do this a couple times if you need to. Make sure you ask questions if you've got them, and good luck on the test.